Comfort food is usually not associated with expensive prices or fine dining. But what if you transformed classic Asian dishes into a $325 Michelin-starred tasting menu? What would the dishes look like, and would it actually be worth the price? Well, this chef and his team are trying to do just that. So we're not only going to see what elevated comfort food looks like, but we're also going to see the original dishes at restaurants around the city, go behind the scenes to see what makes this restaurant so special, and ultimately see if a meal like this can be worth the price. I just woke up. It is 5:48 a.m. and it is still dark outside. And in 12 minutes, John is going to come and pick me up so that we can go to the market. It is an absurdly early start, but we have a jam-packed day ahead of us. Yeah, very, very early in the morning, but it'll be well worth it. We drove all the way across the city to get there, and it was actually so early that the stands hadn't even finished setting up yet. But we were here because it's one of the best farmers markets, not just in the city, but in the entire country.
The market is like one of the most beautiful things about Los Angeles, right? You have access to like all these great things, and if a cook in the city is not utilizing those things, it kind of defeats the purpose of cooking in this area. It's available to everyone, so like at the very baseline, like everyone has access to it, so it's really what you do to it that sets it apart. Things there are of such high intrinsic value that you need to do very little to it. It makes LA a fun place to dine because you get to see different perspectives and cultures do different things with it.
The farmers market is not just a place for the team to get things for the restaurant like these cherry blossoms.
This tree is the prettiest. Aww. Save you a trip to Japan.
You guys are so cute.
But it's also a place where they get to see other chefs and vendors because everyone in LA comes to this market. After getting everything the team needed, we were hungry, so we kicked off our food tour with breakfast. Okay, let's take a step back for a second. The restaurant that we're visiting is Kato in downtown Los Angeles, and the chef that's showing us around is John Yao. John started Kato in 2016, and its original location was in a humble strip mall. As the menu became more ambitious, they were eventually awarded with their first Michelin star, which made it the first Taiwanese restaurant with a Michelin star in the US. But John's influence doesn't just come from his Taiwanese heritage, it also comes from the city of LA itself. In fact, certain dishes in his tasting menu pay homage to dishes at restaurants around the city. So he took us to 4 different places that encapsulate that inspiration, and all of the dishes that we're about to see will actually wind up being on their final tasting menu, starting with breakfast. Taiwanese breakfast is always a feast. It's characterized by savory, carb-heavy dishes, and many breakfast places in Taiwan are chaotic and busy. So we tried to emulate that and ordered a ton of food. Daikon rice cakes, savory soy milk, and one of my personal favorites, youtiao, or this Taiwanese fried dough.
Lick your fingers.
Why do you feel like that?
No, don't rip it now. Stop it now.
Yeah, I just do it like this.
There we go. Starting the day off with the team at the market and at breakfast, you can tell how tight-knit of a group it is. We'll see the team a little bit later and see how these dishes are transformed on their tasting menu, but our next stop took us to San Gabriel Valley to try a super iconic dish. Peking duck is one of my all-time favorite dishes, and there are few places that do it better than Bistro Naz. The glistening skin, masterful carving, but I wanted to know why John decided to take us to all these places around town.
So, I mean, I wanted to take you to eat because usually when you see like the fine dining restaurants located in like a specific place, they have like a bespoke farm. Obviously, California, we have like great produce, but I think the greatest asset for me growing up in this area is like we have really rich cultural capital. We're not trying to replace anything, we're kind of just trying to add to the tapestry of like what's already there. So when we have like a dish, we're not usually trying to make a one-for-one version of it. It's just kind of taking inspiration, our favorite elements of it.
I am personally very excited to see how this one in particular translates onto the menu, but with Peking duck down, we headed to our next restaurant, which was definitely a little bit more casual.
We always try to do like a beef dish based off of beef noodle soup, just because it's like the most like iconic Taiwanese dish, I guess, for Westerners at least. So it's very in line with like what my mom made growing up. And it also doesn't have tomato, which I didn't grow up eating personally. So this is like stylistically, I really like it.
These types of places are my favorite. They're small, humble, and just produce really standout food. But then I saw their wall, and they're actually quite well awarded, which is fully deserved. So afterwards, we went to our last stop before heading to the restaurant to try 2 more dishes that are also on their menu.
So this is cumin lamb. You'll see it in like all types of forms and stuff, but there's usually like a northern Chinese style to it where it's like cumin and some other spices, but our staff really likes it when it's like the skewered barbecue. So we always like keeping that flavor on the menu.
And on top of the cumin lamb, we also had the sour mustard fish, which is one of the few dishes that I've had that leads with acidity. Usually it's an accent, but in this dish, sourness is the star. And before we headed back to the restaurant, we made a quick pit stop to pick up some boba for the team, and I think you can tell that they're chefs by the way they share the boba. Every single one of the dishes that we've tried will be transformed into a fine dining dish at dinner. But John first wanted to show me the Taiwanese pantry they've built using Californian ingredients back at the restaurant.
I think speaking to my parents when they came to America, they're like, hey, we didn't have 99 Ranch. We had to cook the food to the taste how we want and we remembered with things that were around us. You know, we didn't have the money or resources to like import anything. That just wasn't a thing back then.
Most, if not all of these things are from California. The most will go up is along the Pacific coast. So we always have like a rotating pantry of like the things. This is habanada and sudachi that was grown in California. The coriander flower will yield green buds and people typically throw them away, but we like preserve them in salt and vinegar. We're always trying to look for other sweetness that isn't processed sugar. So we've been fermenting garlic in local wildflower honey. Like people use Lee Kum Kee here, right? Lee Kum Kee hoisin is like perfect. You know, it's really hard to compete with something like that. So we're just trying to take local things and like approximate them, but not aim for that flavor.
So after seeing where the ingredients come from at the market, trying out local comfort foods around the city, and seeing how John and his team are able to translate the flavors of Taiwan with the products in California, it's finally time to see how it all comes together at dinner.
I feel like it's like a snapshot of my life, my interests. It's an intersection of culture and produce and Southern California, the immigrant communities and stories that came before us. We're not like avant-garde or overly traditional. I think we're stuck in the middle. We're not trying to recreate anyone's memory. We're just making things that are natural to us and our techniques and our pantry. We're maybe discovering a taste of our childhood through our means.
The meal starts with a few small bites, and already you get the sense that this is not a normal tasting menu. They're all reminiscent of familiar Taiwanese flavors, but with a little spin on them as well. And soon after, we got our first dish on the tasting menu that we tried earlier that day.
So we did youtiao, which is like the cruller. When you have it, it's oftentimes double fried. It's meant to be like oily. It's called oil stick. So we wanted to kind of emulate that sensation. Instead of it having like a burst of fryer oil in your mouth, we fill it with brown butter.
They've made it fancy. So we have that donut on the bottom, that youtiao. Then we have a jinhua ham, and then a little bit of caviar on top. And I'm not gonna lie, this is the most beautiful youtiao I've ever seen in my entire life. I almost don't want to eat it because it's just so beautiful. But I know it'll taste great too, so. Oh my God. I feel like I say this a lot, that was just an explosion in your mouth, but that literally was, because whatever was inside just kind of like oozes as you bite into it. The ham gives it that little bit of saltiness, the caviar is that little bit of creaminess as well. Holy crap, that is a single bite, but it is just pure bliss. Whoa, we're off to a very strong start.
This is actually kind of a personal video for me, because I'm half Taiwanese, and I've eaten at many of the best restaurants around the world, but I've never really seen my culture's food put up on a pedestal like this. And honestly, John felt the same way.
Growing up, I've had some experiences where I felt like we weren't always welcomed in every space, maybe because of like economic standing or like how we look. So I think for us to like service the needs of our immediate area, of our community, and to make sure we have like a safe space where people feel welcome, that historically haven't been welcomed in other spaces. Because I think fine dining has often been seen as like classist or like a luxury thing, but I think it can be for everybody.
And as we hit the main part of dinner, we started to see a lot more of the dishes that we had tried earlier.
So this is with local snap peas and then Castroville artichokes. And then on top is sable fish from Northern California, aged for about a week. And then there's a relish of sour mustard. And then the broth is all the smoked fish bones over the hearth.
This next dish is actually one where we took a field trip out to San Gabriel Valley to try a local version. It is sour fish, which honestly is not really something that a lot of people have had. Most dishes that have sourness, acidity, tend to be either desserts or the acidity is like an accent on top of the main flavors of the dish. And here we have the fancy version of it. The fish is so soft and so buttery, but then it's cut through really nicely by that sour acidic note. That sourness is really at the forefront, which I love, but then you also get this little bit of spice underneath, and oh, it's just so beautifully balanced. It hits kind of like every flavor profile that you can imagine. That is fantastic. One more bite. Yeah, that's great.
And you already know, the next dish we got was a particularly special one for me.
We love doing like whole bird type things, and we wanted to do like a Cantonese barbecue type dish. So we treat the quail very similar to how we would do like fried squab in Cantonese food. So it's lacquered with vinegar and maltose. It's smoked. It's like oil basted. It's not one for one with the dish, but I think visually it emulates the Peking duck, but the moment you cut into it, it's completely different.
For those of you who don't know, my favorite dish of all time is Peking duck. Now we get to try Kato's version. And what they've done is they've basically shrunk the duck. Instead, we get a tiny little quail. But even the way that they're slicing it, even the way that it's cooked, it feels like they're preparing it in a very similar way. And here we are. We're trying it with some cordyceps, as well as a dried morel mushroom sticky rice. And it looks and smells fantastic. Completely different from a Peking duck. They're not trying to replicate these dishes, they're trying to pay homage to these dishes with the techniques, with the flavors, things like that, but put their own spin on it, put a sort of Kato flair on it. And that's exactly what they've done here. It's super tender, beautiful, nice flavors. It's got this nice glaze on it that's a little bit sweet, a little bit savory. It's fantastic. In my head, whenever I'm having a tasting menu, I'm always trying to rank like which is my favorite dish. And I feel like every single one is in contention to be number one, you know? I will say though, I'm getting very, very full. So I think we might have one more savory course, but hopefully we're heading into desserts soon. You are absolutely getting your money's worth when you come here because this is an incredibly filling meal.
Now at this point, you know that bread is always one of my favorite courses. And just look at how beautiful this bread and butter service was.
How much I love bread needs no introduction, and it is bread time. Anytime a bread comes out and it's just so glossy and it has that little bit of salt on it and it pulls apart like this so beautifully, I already know that I'm going to love it. Oh my god. 10 out of 10, no notes. What the hell? I mean, come on. That is insane. It's got everything going for it. Sweet, salty, a little bit of crunch on the outside, really soft and fluffy on the inside. That's as close to a perfect bread as you can get. Everything so far has been so good. Let's keep it going.
While the food might be incredibly intentional and thoughtful, the space actually had a lot of little details as well, like the pieces of art on the wall painted by John's grandfather. And John loves collaborating with other Taiwanese artists. This huge intricate mural was actually painted by this artist who joined us earlier for lunch. And the uniforms they wear were designed by this fashion designer who we also met earlier. And as we headed into the last part of savory dishes, we had 2 more references to places we ate during lunch.
Our team loves getting skewers anywhere after service. So like a huge one right now is like the cumin lamb skewer. So our version is similar to that. We'll do like a spice blend of cumin, Szechuan peppercorns, fennel seed, and coriander seed. We wanted to do more than one variation of the lamb, so we'll age the loin for about 2 weeks, serve that with the fat on. I think for a lot of like East Asian diners, the lamb fat is like the ultimate expression of like lamb flavor, right? And then we'll do our version of like a hujiaoping, like the black pepper bun with the shoulder of the lamb.
I'm surprised at how cuminy, that's not even an adjective, but how cuminy this lamb is. Normally when you see lamb presented like this, it's usually like a very decadent, savory, rich lamb, but this one has a really nice like spice kick to it. That cumin is delicious. and I was not expecting to get a black pepper bun here. For those who don't know, this is probably my favorite Taiwanese night market snack. Whenever I go to Rauha Night Market, specifically in Taipei, I get their black pepper buns. This one is filled with lamb shoulder instead. Oh my god, that is beautiful. It's honestly so cool to see a dinner and a fine dining meal that reflects a lot of things that I've had growing up, a lot of things that I've had in my culture. It makes me very proud. We still have other stuff to come, and I know that there's a few more surprises that are coming, but wow. This meal so far has been absolutely stunning.
And to finish up the savory courses, we had to have the most iconic Taiwanese dish.
I think Westerners oftentimes associate beef noodle soup with like being like the quote unquote national dish of Taiwan. So whenever we do beef, we always try to make sure it's like a beef noodle soup reference. We do like a 40+ day aged beef, grass fed, it's very lean. And then we'll basically make beef noodle soup, but with oxtail, beef tendon. My favorite part of beef noodle soup is the tendon. So it's nice to have that like bouncy braised texture with lean meat when people aren't really expecting it, because you're kind of getting the sensation of eating fatty meat, but you feel like a lot better.
It looks nothing like the beef noodle soup that we had in SGV. I mean, it looks like a really fancy dish. There's obviously no noodles, there's no soup, so we're missing two of the key components of beef noodle soup, and yet that's apparently what this is. So this is supposed to emulate the last bites of beef noodle soup, once everything's mixed in, the mustard greens, the chili, all that stuff. And we even get it with a little bit of a fried taro ball, which is awesome. When I was in Taiwan, I ate so many fried taro balls at every single restaurant. It was so good, but I'm a little bit skeptical of this beef noodle soup. So we're gonna see if without noodles and soup, it could still taste like beef noodle soup. Oh, that is so explosive in your mouth. Like, you really get that punch from the spice. Surprisingly, you get a lot of that similarities. You know that moment in Ratatouille where Anton Ego is sitting down and eating the ratatouille, and then he just gets this flashback growing up eating the ratatouille in his mom's kitchen? That is the feeling that I get from this. It is so reminiscent of home. It is so reminiscent of being this familiar, nostalgic meal, but presented in a completely different way. Like, this looks nothing like I remember it, but those memories, that nostalgia is still evoked from a dish like this. Wow, okay.
I see a lot of fine dining restaurants that do fun twists on comfort foods, but it always feels like it's done more as a gimmick than out of true connection and intention. But at Kato, you really get the sense that nostalgia from comfort foods really drives the flavor profiles of the restaurant. And to finish the night off, we had to have possibly the most nostalgic Taiwanese dessert.
The other thing that people typically associate Taiwanese food is boba milk tea. Taking you on that San Gabriel tour, like, you always end Chinese food tours with boba, so we wanted to end the meal with that. So we do a yam boba that's grown at a local farm, and then we'll soak it in Taiwanese black sugar. We get local dairy, and then we make like a fresh cheese, and then we'll make a butter cookie and then re-blend it with brown butter, and then freeze it and then shave it. So it's like halfway between shaved ice and boba.
Our final dessert also happens to be one of my favorite things in the world, boba. I and you do not want to know how much money I have spent on boba in my life, because it is probably a ridiculous amount. I've tried like every single boba shop in existence. What better way to end an amazing meal here with some really incredible flavors than with my personal favorite dessert. Oh. There's really nothing better than that like QQ chewiness, which Taiwanese boba is really known for, and Taiwanese desserts in general are known for. But this is interesting because it has a little bit of saltiness to it. Like, it's almost like a cheese foam boba, but in a dessert form. That is sick. Yes. I freaking love this place. I have dined at many of the best restaurants around the world, but I don't think that I've been as happy with a meal as I have been here, maybe ever. One, it feels really authentically Taiwanese. I even went to Taiwan and tried 3 Michelin star Taiwanese cuisine there, and it didn't feel this authentically Taiwanese. Two is I don't really get to see that part of my culture expressed in fine dining. I've seen Japanese fine dining, I've seen even Thai fine dining, Malaysian fine dining. Taiwanese fine dining is still very in its infancy, so it's great to see that, and it's honestly like really heartwarming to be able to see the food that I love and the food that I know so well and makes me so nostalgic put on a pedestal like this. And 3, it is just delicious. Like, it's punchy, the flavors are there, everything's really well balanced, it hits every sort of flavor note. This is a truly, truly stunning meal. Like, I think this is probably one of the sleeper hits of like world's best restaurants, you know? Yeah, you come here and you're going to see not only a study of Taiwanese cuisine, but also a study of the area as we've seen today. And it's really cool seeing John and the team draw upon this local area and the Los Angeles culture in order to make this food even more special.
I think this is still a pretty uncharted genre of food, for sure, at least in the States. The difficulty is also the excitement that we're figuring out what it is to be an Asian American fine dining restaurant. What does luxury mean? What does fine dining mean? What does Asian American mean? I think those are all very exciting topics that we're constantly trying to explore. And there's no right answer and there's no one ahead of us to really inform that discovery. So it makes every day at work very rewarding.